Andrea, thank you so much for finding a little bit of time. We've worked one to one, we've worked in groups. If we go way back when, where were you in the journey when we came together? And then what were the changes that you were looking to make?
Mm. When we started working together, I was at the very, very beginning um, of a journey of self-discovery, and I wouldn't have even been able to say at the time that's what it was. I had a vague sense for years that I was searching for something different.
Mm,
And I think at the time that I thought it was something, an external circumstance, other people, that I needed a change. And I wasn't quite sure how to go about that. But I think, what I learned over time working with you is that all of those things I needed, the change that I needed to come from myself. So it was more about building an internal toolkit that I could then use to transform my inner life.
mm,
And then that is what would make the change in my circumstance, in the way that, I dealt with my job, relationships, health, and well being,
mm.
and understanding that all of those things are kind of tied together, but that, I was the agent to make changes in all of those areas.
Mm. I love that sense of agency that you always brought to our conversations. I also love how mindful you were um, thinking about a coaching conversation in inside every coaching conversation. What made you think coaching? Did you have like other options, or was like it's a coaching conversation that I'm looking for in this moment?
Well, I had tried therapy before, and I felt like with that, it was very much about, the focus was always on me, and always, kind of went to the past and how I, typically dealt with things, and, maybe mining, the past for the reasons. And while I found that useful, what I was really looking for was someone to help me, like to co-create a sense of possibility and as, kind of a vision for the future.
Mm,
So I really wanted something that was much more like forward and future facing.
mm,
And I knew I needed someone to kind of work with me, on like in parallel to create my life, basically,
mm,
to design my life.
mm. What was your experience of us working together? I know what mine was. I'll tell you in a minute. What was your experience of us working together?
Well, I have to say, I mean, at times it was deeply challenging. I had
Mm,
never before we met, I think I can say I didn't even know how to make a goal. So, it was sort of like being back at square one. In a way, it was being a human, 101, because I learned so much about relationships.
mm,
Again, kind of taking the focus off of what was happening to me and thinking about the way that, maybe I was affecting the way that I was contributing to, the unhappiness that I felt or the challenges that I felt.
mm,
So it was always thinking about, well, how can I make the situation better? And I think, that can at times be very confronting when you're not used to thinking that way. I think eventually I was able to feel neutral of thinking about the things that I was doing, in a situation where it was looking at all of the facts at once and examining the factors that were contributing to something I wanted to change, and being able to kind of zoom in on each of those kind of factors and develop a clear set of actions, to kind of, in the end, take massive action to make a change in a single area. And then I think, once I started doing that, there was quite a bit of momentum to start to change other aspects of my life. So I started, developing kind of a new routine with exercise that was transformational, and led to kind of looking at diet and wellness like holistically.
mhm,
Relationships we've already talked about. So, not only looking at what was happening inside my work relationships, but historic relationships, even kind of personal ones, like all of those kinds of small changes just led to this sort of avalanche of transformation where now I feel like a completely different person than I did, when we first
mm.
started working together. I think, the past 5 years have been the best years of my life. And I just feel this change where I'm always looking forward to the next. I'm not dreading. Um, I'm looking forward to the next decade, which I think is something really special. It's not, I've gone from kind of a fear of of aging, or, not doing the things that I think I should be accomplishing, but really thinking about what can I do,
Mm.
what is next for me. So I think, it's been quite a positive change in my life. Um, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I acknowledge you, and I you're very open in that sharing there, and that was one of the things I most loved about working with you. I mentioned before how mindful, how thoughtful you are,
Mm,
um, but then that sort of openness and willingness to be vulnerable. And when we worked in groups, I loved it one to one, but when we worked in groups, I know that had a very strong impact on other people in the groups because they told me. And
mm,
actually, you and one other in our group, you and her, went on to be accountability partners for off
yeah.
and on,
Yeah.
way after we finished working together. Yeah, thank you for sharing. What would you say? What would you say my, or who would you say my style of coaching is most suited to?
Mm. Honestly, I think it's anyone who's looking to make a change. I think I've spoken about our work to probably almost everyone in my life, and I know all sorts of different people. So I think it's really, the person who you're most suited to is someone who's really looking to be accountable for their life, and maybe to look for a partner, to help them. The thing I would say is I think coaching is for everybody. Like there's not a single person that I know who wouldn't, maybe benefit from it. And that's not to say that, I think the people around me need to change, but I just know that the change that it's made in my life and in others who have been on a similar journey has been something completely transformational, and something that, will be with them for the rest of their lives, and just has impact on every single area beyond, this kind of specific subjects that we're talking about on the call. um, it's that kind of ability to influence all aspects of our lives.
That's great. Thank you very much. Those were some really kind words there. I really appreciate
Mm,
you coming on. Andrea, thank you so much for being such a fantastic client. It's been great working with you, and I hope it continues long hereafter. Thanks very much, Andrea.
thanks, Dan.